Alright, let's keep going with my Scream franchise reviews and talk about Scream 3. The one that I think is debatedly the worst one by a lot of people's opinions, that people think that this is the worst Scream movie out of all of them. And I guess I'm gonna say I think that too. Like, I do really like a lot of things about Scream 3, but out of all of them, I'd say it is my least favorite. But it's not bad in any ways. Like, it's not a bad movie. It's just honestly underwhelming, and the only thing that I have a real issue with this movie is, in my opinion, I felt like this, out of all, like, I guess Scream 4 does the same type of thing, but I felt like this movie, as opposed to the first two, became more of a parody of itself. Like how in Scream 2 they had the movie within a movie thing, but they didn't focus on it. It's like, it's just the backdrop of the movie, which I liked, and I really loved Scream 2 in the first one. But in this one, it felt a lot like it just was becoming the satire that it has been spoofing. Like, yeah, Scream 2 had the movie within a movie thing with the Stab movie, but in this one, it's about these actors from the Stab movies. Like, the third Stab film is in production in this movie universe in Scream 3. And it's got these actors that, to me, in my opinion, are the least interesting characters in this franchise. Out of, if I had to pick a movie, these characters in this one are so not very interesting. Like, they're not awful, but they're not anything like 1 or 2. Or even 4. I like characters in 4 more than this one. But those are my only real negatives. Like, I think it felt more like a parody than the other Scream movies. Like, it wasn't like Scary Movie, but it felt like them doing the movie within a movie thing fully. It just felt kind of like a parody to me, and I thought that the characters that were there to be killed off, to me, felt like they were just like satire, not characters that were interesting. And this movie has the least amount of violence in it because this happened right around the Columbine, horrible Columbine murders. So they immediately detested like having so much violence in this movie. And originally, after watching this movie, I looked up the trivia. Originally, this sounds like a dumb idea, but it sounds kind of cool too, that originally this movie would have had Stu Macher become the killer again. Like, he would come back, and he would have had this group of like kids in a high school like be the killers, which they completely didn't do because of the Columbine thing. Like, I guess they wrote the script before the Columbine thing happened, and then after that they completely detested it. So this movie has a lot of issues, just production issues, because of the Columbine murders, and because they couldn't show much violence, and they couldn't have Neve Campbell in this enough. She actually was obligated to only do like 20 days worth of shooting in this movie. I forgot what the reason was, but I looked up the trivia. It's something where she had something else, like another filming or something. So having Sydney not in this as much is a shame, and she's awesome as well, just as great as she is in all the movies, but it sucks that she's not in it as much either. So those are my negatives, I guess, and I have the most negatives in this than most of these films. And Scream 4 I have some negatives too, but this one has the most negatives for me, but it's not bad and it's not terrible, but it's not as good as 1 and 2, in my opinion. I did like how it opened with this double kill with Cotton and Christine. Like, Cotton Weary has become famous since Scream 2, which at that awesome ending of Scream 2, Sydney gave him the spotlight. She didn't want it. He wanted the spotlight. He wanted to be free of being accused of murder, even though he was free from realizing that the killers were Billy and Stu, but still, he wanted freedom like Sydney to tell everybody. He wanted his full freedom from being told that he is this killer, and he wasn't. So I really liked how Cotton Weary had became famous after the end of Scream 2. He even had his talk show. And I liked that he was the person to get killed in this, in the beginning, like him and his girlfriend or whatever, Christine, because it makes sense in what the killer, Roman, is doing in terms of eliminating off these all the people that like were the survivors from the last movies. It was only Sydney, Dewey, Gale, and Cotton, so Cotton had to go. And I did like, I didn't feel like it was as much of a cop-out to kill Cotton in the beginning of this movie. I felt like it worked, and I thought that like it just made sense to me that like he would be the first one to go, and he would be the one who actually leads the trail, since Roman has this family connection with Sydney. He's a half brother with her, and that connection of Cotton being the first one to be killed and leaving the photos of Maureen, which he had an affair with Cotton, I liked how that connected to him being the first one to die. Like I liked how that was the starting point of this movie. So I really didn't mind the opening. I thought that was cool. And I liked the soundtrack too. I love the soundtrack to all of them. But I liked how at the beginning, whenever Christine is walking around, like she's like, "Cotton, are you there?" And then a Creed song plays. I'm blanking on the name of it, but it's an awesome song from Creed. That's playing during her walking around, like in the hallway. So yeah, the opening was really not too bad. I enjoyed the opening. And all this stuff with Sidney Prescott, I liked. I really enjoy the fact that after 2, she is in hiding. She is in witness protection. She literally calls herself a new name. She calls herself Laura. She's at a self-help. She does a self-help thing through the phone to help people in need. Which honestly, that seems like the most reasonable way to go after literally her losing all of her friends, all her family, except for like Dewey and Gale. She literally lost everybody. And she is in seclusion because she's like, it happened twice. It's going to probably happen again. Like, how can it have already happened twice? All these murders. So I love the fact that she goes in hiding. Like, it's really a good character, like, where she goes with her character. I enjoy that. And Gale has become a big writer now. And Dewey is on the set of Staff 3. So like, the Dewey and Gale stuff is fine. Like, it's good. Like, they're totally fine like they are before. But I felt like in this one, I don't know, like, they're not shoehorned in, but I felt like they were... Like, I felt like since they were with all those other characters from the movie that weren't that interesting, it made them less interesting in this movie. I don't know why. Like, I felt like they played second fiddle to, like, Sydney, and I thought that in the other movies they didn't. They were as important as Sydney was, and I felt like they weren't as important in this one. But I did like them though together. Like, I thought they were both good. They were both just as good as they are in the other movies, so I enjoyed them. And there's this one scene whenever Gale goes on the set of Stab 3, like in the production studio, and she's walking outside, and then this is the weirdest thing, and I understand because this is a Miramax movie, and the Clerks movies are Miramax movies, but why did you have a cameo with Jay and Silent Bob in this movie? Like, that doesn't... It just felt like a cheap thing to put in this time period. I mean, people know who Jay and Silent Bob are now, but I mean, it's like, why did you do that? And just, I felt like it made it more parody. Like, it did ruin the tone for this movie. Stuff like that. And whenever Gale and her Gale lookalike, the actress Parker Posey plays in this movie, who plays Gale in that Stab 3 movie, they go and try to investigate, and then they find Carrie Fisher, but it's not Carrie Fisher, it's this woman who looks exactly like her. And this woman says, because Gale says, "Oh, you look just like her, like Carrie Fisher," and she's like, "No, I've been hearing that all my life." And she's like, "You know who got the role? The one who slept with George Lucas." And I'm just thinking, this is so weird, and just how it felt like it's parody. And like I said, I really like Jay and Silent Bob. I think are funny on their own, and Carrie Fisher is great. But it's just so weird that they have so many trying to be humorous moments in this movie. But I felt like it really divulged from like being the first 2 movies. I felt like it was really weird just having these characters from another movie, Jay and Silent Bob, and having a Carrie Fisher, but not Carrie Fisher, and she says she looks like her, but the real Carrie Fisher slept with George Lucas, so that's how she got the role in Star Wars. It's like that. I felt like the jokes in this were so kind of over the top, where it just... The other 2, I know people complain about the Scream movies being meta, but I felt like the other 2 at least had a balance and had like... They just referenced movies. In this one, they literally had Jay and Silent Bob and Carrie Fisher, but it's not Carrie Fisher. Like, it's just really weird. I don't get it. Like, I mean, it's not awful, but it's like, why are we doing this stuff in this movie? Just, in my opinion, that bothered me. Um, and then I'm starting to complain more about this because there's things I just thought about while I'm talking about this. Like, after this good scene with Sydney and her father, who appears after the first one again. This is the first time he didn't appear in 2, but that's cool seeing the father again in this one. He's got a scene with Sydney at her secluded house, and he's like, "I'm just worried about you. Like, you're literally alone. You have nobody here, and like all the people who talk to you don't even know who your real identity is." And I like that scene between her and her dad, but then it was kind of ruined by this scene where Sydney has a dream about her mother, but her mother comes in like a ghost, walking up to her window, and she's like, "Sydney, you're just like me. You're cursed. Everything you touch dies. Or everybody you know dies." And it's just really weird and really over the top. And again, I felt like because it's not as real as the other 2 Scream movies, which are not over the top as much as this one. The other 2 Scream movies are brutal, and I felt like this one has brutality in it, but it has silly moments in it like that where it's like, well, what is the point of some of this stuff? And I understand the mom dream is to show that it is fully closing the arc with the mother character. Like, Sydney has been haunted by her. But the first dream was really stupid. Whenever she comes back again, the mother with the bloody, like, blanket over her, then that's more creepy. When you see her with weird whacked out hair and just looking pale like a ghost, like, I thought that was really silly whenever Maureen is shown the first time. So yeah, it's really, really weird. And like I said, these characters from the Stab 3 movie are not very interesting. Like again, it feels like parody, like to where it's not like the first 2, even though the first 2 did like do meta jokes that kind of lampoon them and made people not like the Scream movies in particular. But I thought that the first 2 were more real, quote unquote, realistic in terms of like they just reference movies. And this one, they just are over the top with things that seem kind of supernatural, even though it was a dream that Sydney had. But having characters like Jay and Silent Bob or Carrie Fisher, but not Carrie Fisher in it, just made it so weird. And then there's a cool kill build up to Jenny McCarthy's character, Candy. Well, her name is Sarah, but her character's name in Stab 3 is Candy. But I thought that build-up wasn't too bad. And this is the second time in the movie where you hear the voice box, which this is a cool thing that I will give this movie. This is a really cool difference in all of the movies, because Scream 4 didn't do this either, like the first 2, but this is the only one where the voice box is different. Like, you can have your voice, like, instead of the Ghostface voice, you can manipulate anybody's voice. So at the beginning of the movie, whenever Cotton's girlfriend hears Cotton inside, it's just the voice box that's talking in Cotton's voice. And in this one, which is a cool implication that if you didn't know who the killer is, which is Roman, they do a cool thing with this scene where Sarah's character, Jenny McCarthy's character, is talking in the phone, and it's Roman's voice, but then it becomes the Ghostface voice. And in your head, you don't think, oh, that's because he's the killer. It's just because Roman's talking, and then the voice becomes Ghostface, so it's Ghostface using the sound to make him sound like Roman, but Roman's the actual killer. So I thought that was a really clever use of the voice box. And Jenny McCarthy's death was a pretty effective build-up. Like, I didn't think it was too bad. But then they just start killing off the other actors in the order of the movie, which is a cool idea and concept, but it's just the characters aren't that interesting to me. But I do enjoy Patrick Warburton is in this, and I love how he calls Dewey Dewdrop. I just think that's hilarious. Like, he just cracks me up, because Patrick Warburton can say anything and crack me up, because he's just hilarious, genuinely hilarious. But like, whenever he just calls him Dewdrop, I don't know, that just makes me laugh. So these people keep dying off like the order of the movie. But the scripts are different. There's like 3 different scripts, which is a meta thing implying that this movie did have different scripts in real life. So it's kind of fun, but it's kind of silly. And the killer keeps leaving clues about Maureen. And like I said, the characters are not that interesting. And whenever they're joking, like whenever Parker Posey's character is joking to Gale Weathers, whenever Gale Weathers is talking to Dewey about Parker Posey's character and saying that she's a direct-to-video type of character, it's not helping whenever you reference that she's like a direct-to-video type character, because I felt like she was. Like, I felt like Parker Posey And I feel bad for ripping on Parker Posey because the only movies I've seen her and I don't really like her in, like Blade Trinity. I thought she was really bad in that too. Like, it's unfortunate. And there's one scene where Parker Posey, like, God, she's just obnoxious. Where I think the first person dies, Candy, and then she's there with Patrick Warburton, Stone, the bodyguard, and then Dewey comes in and she's smoking a cigarette, and she's like, Dewey, I haven't had one of these in a year. Somebody's gonna pay for this. And then like Dewey's like, okay, we'll fix it. And then Dewey and Gale leave, and then she just cuddles up with Stone, and Stone just lifts her up, and he holds her in his arms like a baby, and it's just Parker Posey. I don't get why. I don't know. She just bugs me so much in this movie. And in most movies, it's unfortunate because I don't want to rip on a person like that, but I don't like her in this or in the other things I've seen her in. I do like Patrick Dempsey though as Kincaid. I thought that was cool. And again, I read the trivia for this online, and it said that he literally got the job and he had to recite 3 big scenes and he learned them all in one night, which is a good, like, it shows he's a good actor that he can do that. So that's how he got the job. But then we get this scene where Randy's sister, who's that girl from like Hostel 2 and like The Princess Diaries, that one girl that but like she comes in and she's Randy's sister who never mentioned or heard of before, and then she brings a tape of Randy from Windsor College from the second one where he is reciting ways to survive the third film in a trilogy. And honestly, that, like, it's cool to see Jamie Kennedy back even though they killed him, but that to me was over the line in terms of just over the top, because it's like, I understand, like, he did that in the first 2 movies. He did the first one, he's like, this is like all the rules, you can't do this and that in the first movie. And then the second one, he's like, this is the rules of a sequel. And in this one, it makes sense, he's doing the third one of a trilogy. But whenever you have it to where he's on camera, not talking to them, it's a recorded video, and he's talking to them, and he's acting like he's literally talking to them, or he'll respond to them, it just bothers me, and it's so silly. But I like seeing him back, but that was just a silly scene for him. And Gale and Barkin Bin Gale go and investigate, and like I said, they go find Carrie Fisher, not Carrie Fisher, but that really dumb line. And then we get to where Sydney comes and actually like helps out, 'cause she's been in seclusion, and she tells Dewey, and I love this line where he says like, you finally came to see us. And Sydney just says, well, I'm no safe here or there. At least here I've got people. And I just love that line. And it just shows how great of a character Sydney is. Because she wanted to be in seclusion, but then she realizes that the killer can get her from that secluded place she's at. She goes and finds help, finds friends, finds family. And I don't know, like that, I like that a lot. And as the third act went along, I didn't mind the third act. Like, whenever they're at Milton's, like, mansion place, which is the place that's used for Halloween H2O, by the way. Like, if you look at some of the shots, you could tell it's from Halloween H2O because of the big double doors. Like, it looks just like that. And it said online it is the same place. But I can't help but talk about this because last year we had all that shit with Harvey Weinstein and how much of a despicable human being he was. And this movie references and literally points out all this stuff that Harvey Weinstein, who I think produced this, Bob and Harvey Weinstein, of course. There's a line from the character who plays Sydney in the movie in Stab 3, and she's running away while everybody's like, don't run away from us. We gotta stay together. And then she says, like, I was not here to be fucked by that pig Milton, to be in a second-rate movie, or to die with second-rate actors like you two. And it's a line that seems so eventful now because of Harvey Weinstein. I'm assuming almost every woman he's ever like tried to get in his movies has slept with them, or sexually like hurt, like in a way where that's the only way he can get the job, is that he's despicable like that. And I'm glad that he finally got what he deserved. But it's it just was funny how this movie references that horrible shit and nobody even noticed it. I didn't even notice it either. Wow, just it's weird to have this movie from 2000 be so important right now from last year with Harvey Weinstein and everything that came up about him. So yeah, that's funny that they got references to that, to producers having actresses sleep with them to get the part. So funny irony there. And so Sydney finally makes it to the mansion after all these people that I don't care about get killed, and she realizes the killer is Roman, and I do really not mind the Roman character. Like, I like him. I like that this character, even though this is a movie where we don't know anything about this character, he was just introduced in this movie. We'd never seen him before, never heard of him. But it's a twist that I enjoyed, that he is Sydney's half brother. Maureen slept with somebody, and he became the illegitimate child that went and talked to Maureen 4 years ago, before this movie started, to try to have her accept him in as the family, and she threw the door in his face. So I do love how this character, this killer, is literally taking revenge because of his mother, who slept with so many people, had an illegitimate child, and then threw him away. And I really loved how this character, at the end of the movie, like, his explanation for everything, like, and he's the one in this movie that started the whole thing, the reason why everything happened. He set this trail to have Billy Loomis go and kill everybody in the first movie, and of course that set up the mother, Mrs. Loomis, in the second one. But he literally showed the footage to Billy, like, he showed the footage of Maureen and his father having, like, going into the house together, like, into a hotel together, having sex. So it led to Billy becoming the killer in the first one. So it's one of those movie-changing things, sequel-changing things, where, like, it wasn't in the first movie, this guy's never been referenced before, but I enjoyed that. And I love that line he says where he's like, I'm going to take everything away from you, Sid. Everything that belonged to me, like, every single thing that belonged to me that you didn't deserve. So I completely get why this character is this way, like, why he killed these people because of this. But he's the reason for all three movies, which is pretty creepy and pretty sad as well, just because of her mother. Like, her mother is literally the reason for everything. Him and the mother. That was just really interesting how they did that twist, and I enjoyed that twist a lot. And they have the fight, which I enjoy, but then the thing that annoyed me is that Dewey has the final blow in this one. Sydney doesn't even kill the one that's responsible for everything, even though it's her brother. It's like, she did that for everybody else. Why didn't she do that for Roman, the one that actually is the one who gave her literally hell for 4 years and the rest of her life, presumably? So that was stupid that Dewey had the last blow. Like, he shot him in the head and killed him, but, like, Sydney should have done that. I thought she would have been the one to end it. But the last 2 minutes after this fight, and after he's killed, and after Sydney, Dewey, and Gale survive again, I love this last, like, 5 minutes where they're at the secluded house that Sydney lives in. Dewey and Gale get engaged. The score is fantastic with that. And then it shows Sydney looking, like, happy, and Kincaid's there, and he's like, "We're gonna watch a movie." And she says, "What?" And he says, "You'll see." And then Sydney shuts the door. She turns around. You hear the door open. It creaks. She looks at it creaking open. She just stares at it for a second, and then smiles and walks away, because literally she is free. I mean, until Scream 4, but that's 10 years later. But she, at this moment, is free of anything. Like, she's not scared anymore. And I thought that was one of the best scenes in any of the films, where she is just free and finally free of this torment, and I love that. So this movie has a lot of things I like. Sydney, enjoy as much as the last, like, all the movies, and Roman, really like. The new characters are just not interesting to me. They're really pointless and just kind of parodies of the other characters, and it's annoying that they're like that to me. And Dewey and Gale are fine, but I felt like they played second fiddle to Sydney in this one, even though she's not in it as much. It's more about these side characters, which are not very interesting. But, like I said, I really love Sydney and Roman in this. They were great. Just the other characters were not interesting. The violence is very toned down because of, like I said, the Columbine events during this time, so it's unfortunate. But it's just a mixed bag for me. Like, I do like it more than I dislike it, but it's not. I don't like it as much as 1 and 2, but it still is pretty solid. So I'd say I still enjoy this on my newest rewatch.